These are the 15 best Sandbox VR games on the MetaQuest 3 that you have to play. So let's dive right into it. And starting it off on number 15 is Newton's Playground. Now, in this highly rated VR title, you can dive into one of its 15 different maps that each have completely new worlds and interactions within them. And that means that you can choose to start causing some full-on chaos, or maybe just relax and experiment while you're at it. But the main reason why this one became so popular is because you can also build anything that you want from within here. And that can go from vehicles to buildings and so much more. And that makes this often the go-to Sandbox VR game for a lot of Quest users. But that same can be said for number 14, which is Sport Mode. Although, this one is instead mostly focused on its realistic combat mechanics and physics-based systems, meaning that your gears and weapons in here will actually feel like they have some weight behind them, while at the same time having some high level of detail when it comes to how you use each and every one. So, if you like to fight waves upon waves of enemies in any way that you see fit, then this one is perfect for you. However, the only downside though is that the game itself hasn't got any new updates for a while now, so all the content that you get from the beginning is pretty much it for now. And on number 13, we have Battle Talent. And this is a medieval fantasy roguelite that lets you experiment with any fighting style that you can come up with, while you're also battling your way through its many different levels. But the best part is of course its amazing sandbox mode, where you can use the built-in scene editor, or even install some of its over 2,000 different mods to really enhance that overall experience. And that is not even mentioning that it also has a mixed reality and multiplayer mode, as well as a constant stream of free new content and updates that the devs push out at a fast pace. But moving on, we have number 12, and that is DigiGods. And this is really a Sandbox VR experience in every single way possible. And while the graphics might not be anything to write home about, this one is actually completely free. And the goal in here is for you to create some fun gameplay levels yourself and share and play them with other people across the world. But even if you aren't that creative, then you can also just choose to visit the already built-in ones or one of the many worlds that others have made. And on number 11, we got Beyond Sandbox. And yes, this is probably one of the most controversial ones on this list, since while at first it seems like it has some great graphics and cool looking interactions, the game itself is still in very early access. And that means that a bunch of features are still completely missing, as well as a lot of bugs and glitches being present, much more than you might originally expect. Although, the devs did already put out quite a lot of updates to fix these issues, but it is definitely something to still keep in mind before diving into it. And on number 10, we have another free VR game named Grab, which is a simple yet popular parkour experience in which you and your friends can take on a challenge and won over its million player-made obstacle courses that can go from speedruns to puzzle solvers and a lot more. But moving on, we got number 9, which is known as Strayed. And this is best described as a VR survival game in which you will have to start from nothing and have to craft and build your own bases to survive. But the fun twist is that besides just exploring the place, you will also come across other players that you can either team up with or that might betray you right behind your back. So definitely make sure to stay alert in who you trust and who you don't. And on an important note is that this is also still an early access title, meaning that new content and polish of the overall gameplay will still be added and improved on over time. But that gets us to number 8, which is Yeeps. Now this is another free game, which has over a whopping 85,000 reviews on the Quest Store, and that with an average of 4.8 stars. But honestly, it is also clear to see why. Because while it originally started out as a classic hide-and-seek simulator, over the years, they have added a bunch of new game modes that go from PvP arenas to team battles and prop hunts, and much more. But while talking about popular games, maybe the most known of all is of course Roblox VR. And yes, this is basically the standard Roblox experience, but then made for virtual reality. However, there are sadly only a very limited amount of actual good VR worlds that were mostly just added at launch. And besides that, the startup screen of the game often also completely glitches out, with you having to restart the app over and over again. But on the other side, of course, since it is free, it is definitely still worth to check it out. And on number 6, we have Plastic Battlegrounds. And this is by far one of the most unique VR games of all. Because at its core, it is a toy-based battle simulator where you can place and arrange plastic soldiers all over the place. But when they will come to life and start fighting, besides you just watching them, you can also embody any of these soldiers yourself from a first-person perspective. So that is pretty damn cool. But before we get to the top 5 best Sandbox VR games that you really don't want to miss, let's first have a quick word from the company that made this video possible. Because none other than Cat VR, who are known for creating VR treadmills that look like they come straight out of Ready Player One, are once again taking virtual reality to the next level. Because while we are normally limited by the boundary system inside our VR experiences, it is Cat VR that has created these VR treadmills that let you run and jump without any limitation. And since their most recent version, which is known as the C2 Plus Enhanced, is compatible with every VR headset that you can think of, it is also often considered as the dream upgrade for any VR user. And they even go so far that it has things like haptic feedback built into it, as well as a vehicle hub, which will make it feel even more realistic when you're racing on a track or flying through the sky. And as a cherry on top, you can also use the code VRelity for a whopping $130 off on your entire purchase. So for those who are interested, I'll leave a link in the description below. And on number 5 is Hard Bullet. Now this is for all those combat lovers out there, because here, you can battle and take out your opponents in nearly an infinite amount of ways, making this often feel like you're the protagonist of a superhero movie yourself. So, expect a lot of high-paced action and tricks while you're taking out waves upon waves of enemies. And on number 4 is Downshot, which is a multiplayer physics sandbox game that has hundreds of vehicles, props, and even entire buildings for you to spawn in, as well as a nearly unlimited amount of maps and mod support. But besides that, the devs themselves also have added nearly a whole game worth of content to it already. They have still a lot more planned for their future releases. So, if you like to play sandbox games with your friends or with other people online, then you can't go wrong with Downshot. But of course, no list would be complete without number 3, which is Questcraft. And simply put, this is a port of Minecraft, but then with VR controls and playable on the Quest headsets. And while this game itself probably doesn't need any introduction at all, it is still pretty much the sandbox VR game that blew up the entire genre. Although, this is also the only one that you will have to get through side quest, since it never became directly available from the base meta store. So keep that in mind. And on number 2, we have Bone Lab. And this is made by none other than the legendary team known as Stress Level Zero. And by many, this is also among one of the best meta quest games in general. But while it also has a great but short campaign mode built into it, it is the many different sandbox modes that you can unlock in the general hub that makes this a highly replayable title that feels much more realistic in its movements and combat compared to almost any other VR game out there. However, that also gets us to number 1, and that is none other than Blade and Sorcery Nomad. And in here, you'll be placed in a medieval fantasy world that has everything from magical spells to melee combat, as well as all the features that you could probably want from this highly polished VR title. And with its absolute massive amount of content that it got on its 1.0 release, this is pretty much also the must-have game for any Quest user. But that isn't all, because besides all these great sandbox VR games, there are also some even more realistic looking experiences on the Quest headsets that you need to know about. So click on the video that you see on screen right now to make sure you don't miss out on that. And of course, stay awesome.